This is the Assassin stream. This is going to be the Assassin videos. They'll be up on YouTube very shortly after the stream, hopefully. And this is not only how to play Assassins, but also how to play against them. This video is going to focus not only on the beginner aspect of things, how to get introduced into Assassins, but it should also be really useful for the more advanced players. I'm going to be covering things specifically that I didn't know, or things that I think a lot of the League community doesn't know about these champions. We'll be going over every single champion in detail, going over their abilities, all that stuff. We've got information on how they do in pro play, how they do in solo queue. We'll be talking a little bit about their lore for each one of the champions. We'll be talking about their power spikes, what's their common runes and build paths, all of that stuff. We won't go into a lot of like really in-depth like combos or things like that. There are plenty of great players out there who have very detailed combo guides, and I definitely want to point you towards those people because they are far better at those champions than I am. I'm going to focus on things more from an analytical perspective and from a numbers perspective, and also from a details perspective, so you guys can learn the details about these champions that a lot of people don't know. So first up, we're going to talk about the Evasion Assassins. So the Evasion Assassins I'm going to be calling Akali, Fizz, and Zed. All right, next assassin we're going to talk about is Zed. So, Zed was released in 2012, had minor changes in 2016. He is known as the Master of Shadows. He had a pretty high presence in pro play before Season 6. Since Season 6, he's kind of dropped off as far as his pro play presence. He is a reasonably popular champion with a win rate that hovers just slightly below 50%. He's a very complex champion, very high skill ceiling, not that easy to pick up initially for new players, but typically you'll see a lot of people who have just insane mastery on him. A lot of one tricks who play Zed. So, lore for Zed. There is a comic that's out on Zed right now that seems pretty good. I have been reading that comic, and it goes a little bit more into Zed's backstory. But he is the adopted son of Shen's father, and he ended up killing Shen's father, mainly because Shen's father would not take sides in the Ionian versus Noxus conflict. Zed felt like that was a betrayal. He turned to the forbidden shadow magic to stop the Noxian invasion of Ionia. And when he killed Shen's father, he really kind of shattered the Kinku order. He basically said, hey, if you want to go fight Noxus, join me. And basically the Kinku order split, and some followed Zed, some followed Shen. And it's basically been kind of a feud ever since. Zed believes that he's doing what he must in order to save his homeland. A lot of people dislike him because of what he's done. He'll basically, whatever the cost, he feels like he's going to do whatever he needs to in order to protect Ionia. He is basically the sworn enemy of Jhin. He freaking hates Jhin, probably more than any champion. He is hated by Shen and Akali, but he doesn't really bear that much ill will towards them. He understands why they hate him, but he doesn't necessarily want to fight them or want to kill them. So Zed, his early game is not that bad due to the ranged harass that he can get, and also the CSing he can do from his Q. He does have kill threat once he hits level 3, and he has all of his abilities. He's extremely hard to gank. That's one of the things that I hate personally the most about Zed, is that it feels like you can never gank him, because as long as he holds on to his W and is really stingy with it, he always will have that W escape anytime you try to gank him. He has massive kill threat once he hits level 6. That ultimate is pretty much a guaranteed kill if he's able to poke people down even a little bit. He snowballs extremely hard in the mid game. He just becomes his mid game terror, but he tends to fall off late game. I guess that's the one reassuring thing. So the big thing if you're playing up against a Zed is just be super careful around those level 6 power spikes. If you're below half health, you got to get out of lane. Don't let him snowball. You got to be very careful of him roaming. And then just if he starts getting a couple kills, the big thing is just trying to stop the bleeding. He will eventually fall off. You just have to kind of wait it out a little bit. So, Zed's passive is called Contempt for the Weak. So, his next attack deals percent maximum health damage if the target is below half health. So, this is why you have to be really careful if you're below half health when you go up against a Zed, because he gains that additional burst damage that's based off of your maximum health once you drop below 50% health. So, it scales based on level. It's anywhere from 6 to 10% of the target's maximum health. It's also magic damage. So most of Zed's kit is physical damage, but this passive is actually magic damage. So even if you itemize armor against it, it won't actually help you. It does have a 10-second cooldown per target, so he could proc it on multiple targets in a fight, but he can only proc it once per target every 10 seconds. Yeah, so it basically puts most champions within kill range if they're below half health. So anytime you're below half health, you got to stay away from Zed. So Zed's Q is Razor Shuriken. So both Zed and his Shadow will throw shurikens when he uses this ability. The damage stacks from both shurikens, but the damage is reduced to 60% against units beyond the first struck. So one big thing when you're playing against Zed is you don't want to be the first target struck by the shuriken. So you want to use minions, block, things like that. It'll greatly reduce the amount of damage that he deals with his shurikens. If Zed is able to hit with both of his shurikens and you're the first target, it's a massive amount of damage. So that's the number one thing you want to try and avoid, is when he uses his Shadow getting hit first with both of those shurikens. It is a fixed 6-second cooldown, so he can basically spam it a lot in lane. It can be a great tool for him for harass or safe CSing, and it basically allows him to gain some early pushing power even against ranged matchups. So Zed's W, this is called Living Shadow. This is kind of one of his most iconic abilities. Very long cooldown. It creates a shadow of Zed. It's got a range of 650, so it travels pretty far. And basically the shadow will mimic Zed's Q and his E. If the shadow hits with an ability, it will restore energy to Zed. So the energy restore is 30 to 50 based on the W rank. So usually it'll be 30 since you typically max W last. But it does give him additional energy, which allows him to use more of his abilities. And he can swap with the Shadow once. So you can basically use it as an engage tool, swap with the Shadow, or you can use it as a disengage tool. Or if he's already in melee range, he can use it to basically double up on his damage, and then he can swap to avoid some crowd control or something like that. And it basically makes Zed really, really hard to gank or punish. As long as he's got his W up, it's near impossible to gank him unless you've got a ridiculous amount of crowd control. Zed's E is called Shadow Slash. It's a short-range AoE that's kind of in a circle around him. The effect radius is 290 range, so it's a little bit longer than melee range. It will slow for 1.5 seconds. If you hit both slashes, so if both your Shadow and you hit with the Zed E, the damage will only apply once, but the slow is increased. It increases the slow potency by 50%. So the normal slow is 20 to 40%, so it goes up to 30 to 60% if you hit with both of the E's. And it will reduce the cooldown of W by 2 seconds per champion hit. So it's really useful to reduce the cooldown of your W so that you can get it back up much quicker, since the W cooldown is pretty long. W cooldown is 22 seconds at rank 1, drops to 14 seconds at rank 5. And then finally, we've got Zed's ultimate Death Mark. It is point and click. It makes Zed untargetable for 0.6 seconds. He is ghosted for 3 seconds during this ultimate, and for those 3 seconds, a percentage of all of his damage dealt is stored, and it will detonate on the target at the end of the duration. So the amount of damage he stores is 25 to 55% of all damage dealt. Based on his rank in his R. So it's 25% at rank 1, 40% at rank 2, and 55% at rank 3. And Zed can blink back to the original location during this ability. So it makes Zed really slippery because in addition to having the W that he can use, that he can blink to, he can also blink back to his original location once he casts when he's casting this ability. So it makes it so that he has multiple dashes in and out of a team fight. This is really his ability that he uses to just assassinate anyone when he's ahead. It's really good at just basically popping a squishy carry, and then he immediately is able to escape, and it's very hard to punish him anytime he's got his ultimate up. So Zed, his abilities you want to max. First up, definitely you always want to max R. His bread and butter is Q, then E. Last you'll max W. You pretty much always want to go electrocute on Zed. You pretty much always want to go flash ignite on Zed. Yoba's Ghost Blade and Dust Blade of Drakthar are obviously his core items. Hex Drinker is a good rush if you're in a difficult AP matchup. And you basically want to just stack AD and Armor Shred if you're against a Zed. So the big things when you're playing against him is you definitely want to be extremely cautious when you are below 50% health. Sustained items are really good. Early armor is really, really good against him. You basically just want to stay out of that burst threshold, especially with his ultimate. You have to be extremely mindful of his level 6 power spike. If a Zed has a slight experience advantage, he will almost always all-in you if he hits level 6 before you do. And then basically you have to just use really good vision control, make sure he doesn't roam and get out of control, and just hope that he doesn't get too fed and wait for him to fall off, because he will fall off late game. All right, so that's all I had for Zed. Any questions on that? Get some Zed Talon mains in the chat. So yeah, you guys tell me what I got wrong. I definitely want to hear what I did good or bad about all these champions. Yep, Rush Ninja Tabbies. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. Tab Eyes is super good against Zed. Or if you're an AP champion or early Seekers, really good against Zed. Yeah. Tab Eyes Seeker Rush. You can't do much. And Seekers is actually really gold efficient. Seekers is a really gold efficient item once it gets stacked up. Really gold efficient. Alright guys, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And if you feel like I missed anything essential with regards to Zed, please leave a comment below. All I ask is that you be respectful. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. This is Randomonium, signing off.